Logan Paul's career was nearly over after his most notorious scandal. 5 years later, his drink brand Prime did $1.2 billion in sales in a single year, outselling Gatorade in some stores. In 2018, Paul posted a video from Japan's Aokigahara forest that showed a suicide victim. The backlash was instant and universal. YouTube cut his ad revenue. Sponsors fled. His name became synonymous with the worst impulses of internet fame. He was 22 years old and already finished. But Paul didn't disappear. He pivoted into boxing, podcasting, and eventually product creation. In 2022, he and fellow YouTuber KSI launched Prime Hydration, a sports drink targeting Gen Z. Within 12 months, it became one of the fastest-growing beverage brands in history. Store shelves emptied. Resellers charged $50 per bottle. Celebrities posed with it. The company signed partnerships with the UFC, Arsenal Football Club, and the Los Angeles Dodgers. How does someone this cancelled build something this big? How did Logan Paul turn the lowest moment of his career into a billion-dollar comeback? Logan Alexander Paul was born in Westlake, Ohio, in 1995. His father, Greg Paul, filmed his sons constantly, creating an early archive of stunts, pranks, and athletic feats. Logan wrestled in high school and enrolled at Ohio University on an engineering track, but dropped out after one semester when Vine took off. Vine was a 6-second video platform owned by Twitter. It launched in 2013 and became the training ground for a generation of internet creators. Paul joined in 2013, posting slapstick loops, falling down stairs, making faces, yelling punchlines. His physical comedy and willingness to humiliate himself translated perfectly to the format. By 2014, he had millions of followers. He moved to Los Angeles and rented an apartment in the same complex as other Vine stars. The ecosystem was collaborative, incestuous, and relentlessly output-driven. Creators made dozens of videos per week, cross-promoted, and chased trends in real time. Paul became one of the top 10 most followed accounts on Vine, with over 9 million followers by the time the platform shut down in 2017. His content was loud, fast, obnoxious, and algorithmically optimized for virality. He wore bright colors. He staged elaborate pranks. He kissed strangers. He threw furniture off balconies. His persona was a 12-year-old boy's ID unleashed with a production budget. When Vine died, Paul had already begun transitioning to YouTube, where longer runtimes allowed for bigger stunts and deeper monetization. By early 2017, he had 15 million YouTube subscribers and was earning 7 figures annually from ad revenue, sponsorships, and merchandise. He moved into a mansion in Encino with a crew of friends and collaborators, turning his life into a 24/7 content operation. In 2017, Logan Paul committed to a daily vlog. Every morning at 6 a.m. Pacific Time, a new video appeared on his channel. The format was chaotic, high energy, and immersive, Paul with a camera in his face, narrating his day, pulling friends and strangers into stunts, jumping into pools, crashing parties, buying expensive things. The Encino house became the center of the operation. Paul filled it with exotic animals, a parrot, a turtle, miniature horses. He hired a full-time videographer and editor. He treated his life like a reality show. The audience was mostly boys between 8 and 16. They watched because Paul did things they couldn't, drove Lamborghinis, hung out with celebrities, threw massive parties. He made chaos look like freedom. The daily vlog became one of the most watched series on YouTube. Paul's subscriber count climbed past 18 million. His merchandise line, Maverick, sold hoodies and hats to millions of kids. He signed a deal with YouTube Red to produce a feature film. He appeared on talk shows. He met with brand executives. He was building an empire on one core thesis: His audience didn't care about production value or storytelling, they cared about access. The more Paul showed, the more they watched. But the model was unsustainable. Daily uploads required constant escalation. The stunts grew more dangerous. The pranks more invasive. Paul's content became a feedback loop, each video had to be bigger than the last to keep the algorithm happy. In December 2017, Paul traveled to Tokyo with his crew. He filmed himself throwing pokeballs at pedestrians, running through intersections, and causing disturbances in a fish market. The videos were widely criticized for disrespecting Japanese culture. But Paul kept filming. On December 31, 2017, he and his crew drove to Aokigahara, a forest at the base of Mount Fuji known as a site where people go to take their own lives. In Aokigahara, Logan Paul and his crew encountered the body of a man who had died by suicide. Paul filmed it. He uploaded the video to YouTube with the title, "We found a dead body in the Japanese suicide forest." The thumbnail showed Paul with his hands on his head, mouth open in shock. The body was blurred but visible. The video opened with a disclaimer about suicide prevention, but then proceeded with Paul and his friends joking, laughing, and reacting with exaggerated horror. The video went live on December 31, 2017. Within hours, it had millions of views. By the next morning, the backlash was universal. Celebrities, mental health advocates, and other YouTubers condemned Paul. The video was called exploitative, insensitive, and sociopathic. Paul deleted it and issued an apology. Then he issued a second apology. Then a video apology. None of it stopped the collapse. YouTube removed him from the Google Preferred Ad program, cutting his revenue by an estimated 80%. His YouTube Red projects were cancelled. Sponsors pulled out. His name became a punchline and a cautionary tale. He was the face of everything wrong with internet culture: narcissism, exploitation, algorithmic addiction. For most creators, that would be the end. Paul went quiet for 3 weeks. Then he came back with a different strategy. He pivoted to long-form content. He launched a podcast, Impulsive, with 2 co-hosts and a loose, conversational format. The show gave him a platform to control his narrative without the pressure of daily uploads. He leaned into controversy, booking guests other platforms wouldn't touch: flat earthers, conspiracy theorists, controversial public figures. The podcast grew quickly. Then Paul did something unexpected. He challenged KSI, a British YouTuber and former rival, to a boxing match. The Logan Paul vs. KSI fight was announced in 2018. It was framed as the biggest event in YouTube history, 2 of the platform's biggest stars settling their feud in the ring. The first fight took place in August 2018 at the Manchester Arena in England. 20,000 people attended. The pay-per-view sold over 1 million buys. The fight ended in a draw. A rematch was scheduled for November 2019 at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. The event sold out. It was broadcast on DAZN. KSI won by split decision, but the result didn't matter. Paul had rebuilt his career. Boxing gave him legitimacy. It required discipline, training, and risk. It was the opposite of the chaotic, consequence-free content that had defined his early career. Paul leaned into the sport. He trained with professional coaches, lost weight, and documented the process. He fought Floyd Mayweather in an exhibition match in June 2021. Mayweather, one of the greatest boxers of all time, carried Paul through 8 rounds. Paul lost, but he lasted the distance and earned an estimated $20 million. The fight was ridiculed by boxing purists, but it proved Paul's draw power. He could sell tickets, pay-per-views, and sponsorships. He had an audience that would follow him into any arena. In 2022, Paul signed a contract with WWE and began appearing on Monday Night Raw. He trained as a professional wrestler and performed at WrestleMania. The pivot to physical performance was strategic. It positioned Paul as an athlete, not just a content creator. It gave him a narrative of redemption and reinvention. But the biggest move was still ahead. In January 2022, Paul and KSI announced Prime Hydration, a line of sports drinks designed to compete with Gatorade, Powerade, and Body Armor. The product was developed in partnership with Congo Brands, a beverage company based in Louisville, Kentucky. The launch was positioned as a collaboration between former rivals, two creators building something together. Prime Hydration launched in January 2022 with 5 flavors and a single promise: hydration with zero sugar and electrolytes. The marketing was entirely driven by Paul and KSI's social reach. They posted unboxing videos, taste tests, and giveaways. They sent cases to influencers, athletes, and celebrities. Within weeks, the product became impossible to find. Grocery stores sold out within hours of restocking. Resellers on eBay and StockX charged $30 to $50 per bottle. Parents camped outside stores at dawn to buy cases for their kids. The scarcity was partly intentional. Prime's distribution deal with Walmart, Target, and Kroger was limited at first, but the demand far exceeded expectations. By mid-2022, Prime was the fastest-growing beverage brand in America. The company signed sponsorship deals with the UFC, Arsenal Football Club, FC Barcelona, and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Athletes posted photos drinking Prime. Celebrities endorsed it. The brand crossed over from internet novelty to mainstream phenomenon. In 2023, Congo Brands reported that Prime generated $1.2 billion in retail sales in its first full year. That made it one of the most successful beverage launches in history, faster than Red Bull, Gatorade, or vitamin water in their early years. But the success came with scrutiny. In July 2023, Senator Chuck Schumer called for an FDA investigation into Prime Energy, the caffeinated version of the drink, citing concerns about marketing to children. The product contained 200 milligrams of caffeine per can, more than 6 Coke cans or 2 Red Bulls. Critics argued that the influencer-driven marketing targeted kids too young to handle that much caffeine. Prime responded by clarifying that Prime Hydration, the sports drink, was caffeine-free and that Prime Energy was labeled for adults. But the damage was done. Schools in the UK and Australia banned the drink. Parents' groups organized boycotts. The brand became a lightning rod for debates about influencer marketing, child safety, and unregulated supplements. Then the lawsuit started. In November 2023, a class action lawsuit was filed against Prime Hydration in New York, alleging that independent lab tests found the drink contained significantly less electrolytes and antioxidants than advertised. The suit claimed the labeling was misleading and that the product was essentially flavored water with artificial sweeteners. Congo Brands denied the allegations and called the lawsuit baseless. But the story spread. YouTube channels dedicated to debunking internet products dissected Prime's ingredient list. Nutritionists pointed out that the electrolyte content was lower than competitors like Gatorade. The brand's credibility took a hit. At the same time, Logan Paul faced separate controversies. In December 2023, a BBC investigation accused Paul of misleading fans in his promotion of CryptoZoo, an NFT-based game he launched in 2021. The project had promised players the ability to breed, trade, and earn money from digital animals. Thousands of fans invested. The game never launched. Paul released a video in January 2023 apologizing and offering to refund investors, but the BBC found that many had not been repaid. The investigation alleged Paul made over $2 million from the project. The story painted Paul as a serial opportunist who exploited his young audience for profit. The CryptoZoo scandal became a recurring theme in criticism of Prime, the idea that Paul and KSI were less interested in building a quality product than in extracting maximum profit from their fans' loyalty. Despite the backlash, Prime's sales remained strong. The brand expanded internationally, launching in Canada, Mexico, and Europe. It released new flavors. It signed more athletes. By the end of 2023, Prime was available in over 100,000 retail locations worldwide. But the growth had plateaued. The novelty had worn off. The resale market collapsed. Bottles that once sold for $50 now sat unsold at retail price. Reports surfaced of stores marking down Prime to clear inventory. The brand was no longer scarce, and scarcity had been a core driver of its hype. Paul and KSI remained publicly optimistic, but inside the company, questions loomed. Was Prime a billion-dollar flash in the pan, or could it sustain long-term? As of 2024, Logan Paul is worth an estimated $150 million. Prime Hydration is sold in tens of thousands of stores. Paul is a signed WWE performer, a podcaster with millions of listeners, and a product entrepreneur. He is no longer the villain of 2018. He rebuilt. But the question isn't whether Paul succeeded, it's whether the success is sustainable, and whether it required compromising the very audience that made it possible. Prime's rise was fueled by the same mechanics that powered Paul's early YouTube career: hype, scarcity, and the parasocial loyalty of young fans who wanted to be part of the moment. The brand didn't win on taste or innovation, it won on access and identity. Buying Prime was buying into Logan Paul. That model works until it doesn't. When the hype fades, when the product sits on shelves, when the controversies pile up, the brand has to stand on its own merits. Prime's long-term survival depends on whether it can transition from influencer novelty to legitimate competitor in a market dominated by Gatorade, Powerade, and Coca-Cola. Paul's story is a case study in reputation recovery through relentless reinvention. He didn't apologize his way back, he built his way back. He took risks. He entered uncomfortable arenas. He collaborated with a former rival. He leveraged his audience at the exact moment when influencer brands were exploding. But the story is also a warning. Every product Paul has launched, from Maverick merch to CryptoZoo to Prime, has been built on the assumption that his fans will buy anything he sells. That works until trust erodes. The lesson isn't that cancellation is survivable, it's that survival requires building something the market genuinely wants, independent of who's selling it. Paul's career was nearly over in 2018. 5 years later, he had a billion-dollar brand. Whether that brand lasts another 5 years will depend on whether Prime can stand on its own, or whether it was always just Logan Paul in a bottle.